This is Real News Media TV, coverage you can trust. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates. Tow truck and a car on fire close to Kingston gas station. A team of firefighters is now on the scene where a white ad wagon caught a fire while on a wrecker on a section of the Sir Florizel Glasspool Highway in Kingston. The incident unfolded in the vicinity of a popular gas station. Reports are that the driver of the ad wagon committed a road offense and was signaled to stop by the police. The wrecker was called to tow the vehicle. Sources report that while driving along the roadway, a passerby signaled the driver of the wrecker that the fire was seen from inside the car. Firefighters are now on the scene trying to extinguish the blaze. Voice of Hill and Goalie rider Kerry Robinson has died. Kerry Fitzwilliam Robinson, the journalist, author, and historian, known as the voice of the television program Hill and Goalie Ride, has died. Robinson passed away in his sleep at his St. Andrew home yesterday at the age of 97. He has been ailing for some time. Robinson has had an impactful, decades-long career in media as a journalist and a manager, but was most famous for his work as a producer and a narrator of the community program Hill and Goalie Ride. It delved into Jamaican history, fused with exciting stories of people, their lives and work, and how they interacted in their communities in every nook and cranny of Jamaica. A Calabar High School alumnus, Robinson grew up in British Jamaica and later attended Howard University, where his intention was to study medicine. But the lanky lad instead pursued history and psychology, and on returning to Jamaica embarked on a quest that would help him to make a contribution to nation building. That was how he landed a job at the Gleaner before he became a broadcaster at Radio Jamaica and later an employee of the government's public relations office, now the Jamaica Information Service. Robinson was head of the public relations office from around 1962 to 1971 when he was made general manager of the Jamaica Broadcasting Corporation, a post he held until 1987. He later served overseas in Jamaican embassies in Washington, D.C. and Mexico City. Robinson has done extensive research on the Maroons and penned their history in the book The Fighting Maroons of Jamaica. He is also the author of The Iron Thorn and the Memoirs of a Media Man. Robinson had been conferred with the Order of Distinction and the Silver Musgrave Medal. He has also been awarded by the Press Association of Jamaica. His wife predeceased him more than a decade, and they were the parents of one daughter, Catherine. Murderer gets a life sentence. A St. Catherine laborer who robbed a man of his wallet after peppering him with bullets in 2017 was sentenced Thursday to life in prison after he was found guilty of murder. Justice Leighton Pusey, in handing down the sentence in the gun court, ruled that the convicted killer Andre Stoddard must serve 21 years in prison before being eligible for parole. The convicted killer's co-accused Ramon Alexander was, however, freed of murder and gun charges. Stoddard was convicted of murder as well as robbery with aggravation and illegal possession of firearm and ammunition during a paper trial. He was also sentenced to serve 20 years each on gun and robbery charges. However, the sentences are to run concurrently. The now deceased Stephen James, otherwise called the Crime Boss, was shot and injured while at a bar in Nagahead, St. Catherine on October 30, 2017. James, who had recorded a statement before he succumbed to his injuries, indicated that both men were known to him and that on the day in question, he was sitting inside the bar when he saw Alexander standing in the doorway holding a pistol against his left leg. At the same time, he spotted Stoddard pulling out a handgun. James said while running out of the bar screaming murder, he heard several explosions. The injured man, who fell after he was shot, said Stoddard, armed with a gun, came towards him while he lay on the ground and took his wallet. After the shooting, the injured man was rushed to the hospital and both men were arrested and charged. Both had, however, maintained their innocence while insisting that they were never present on the day of the incident. Attorneys at law Tom Tavares Finson QC and Donahue Martin, who represented Alexander in the no-case application, submitted that the prosecution had failed in its duty to prove a case against their client to the requisite standard. The lawyers averred that the failure of the police to hold an identification parade and to provide an explanation was fatal to the conviction, noting that the now deceased had merely mentioned that he had known both defendants for 10 years. The lawyers argued that that was not sufficient evidence to meet the threshold of recognition evidence. The judge consequently agreed with the lawyers that should that evidence be adduced, it would be unfair material and prejudicial to the defendant. As a result, Alexander was freed of the charges. Agriculture Ministry says the proposed chicken policy won't affect local suppliers. The Agriculture Ministry has given the assurance that it will not take any action that will adversely impact local suppliers of chicken meat. Orville Palmer, Chief Technical Director in the Agriculture Ministry, says the proposal presented by Minister Pernell Charles Jr. to allow cheaper imported chicken leg quarters is not aimed at destroying suppliers in Jamaica. The proposal calls for the suspension of the common external tariff and additional stamp duties on leg quarters to ease the burden on consumers who are facing increased prices. But this has caused concern among local suppliers who fear that the cheaper imports will destroy the industry. Responding to concerns, Mr. Palmer said the fears may be premature because the removal of the tariffs is just one option that is being considered, and the ministry has already taken steps which would ensure the local industry is protected. Among these steps, he said, is a $50 million allocation to assist the small farmers in purchasing chicks, feed, medication, and other things to help boost their production.
The removal of the CET and the ASD and the leg quarter is one option that is being considered. Secondly, with regard to the small farmers, the Ministry of Agriculture has already taken steps to make $50 million available to assist small farmers in purchasing chicks and feed and medication and so on, to assist them in boosting their production, so that what will ultimately happen is that the producers themselves, the manufacturers, the processors, they will have more raw material passing through their plants, and ultimately they'll realize greater efficiencies. The Ministry of Agriculture will also be looking, partnering with the private sector and looking at ways in which we can do some research and development to see what indigenous material we can use to incorporate in our animal feed, so that not just from a food security perspective, but also we'll be able to cushion the price, because a large part of this is really the cost of feed. And so we're looking at this thing, it's a holistic approach.
Capri calls for legislation to make access to banking services easier for Jamaicans. The Caribbean Policy Research Institute is recommending the government enact legislation that will allow financial institutions to share information to make it easier for Jamaicans to access banking services. Capri's latest research found that 17% of Jamaicans remain unbanked and 75% of the respondents to its survey had a preference for using cash. Executive Director of Capri, Dr. Damien King, said a significant number of Jamaicans are also saving money outside of the banking system.
Why is it more people don't have savings accounts? Our survey revealed that half of the low-income population actually have savings, but little of it is in a financial account, is in a bank account. It turns out that 2 out of 5 persons in our survey said that they lacked proof of address that they would need to be able to access a bank account. If we can complete the establishment, the drafting and implementation of these regulations, then we're going to have open platforms and facilitating regulations, out of which will come competition and innovation. And it is that competitive innovation that is going to bring new players and new services that are going to seep into every financial service niche. Bringing in the unbanked is not for the existing institutions to reach out to them. It is for the financial sector to be able to reach the unbanked where they are. Have you accessed any kind of borrowing, even on a credit card, over the last 6 months? Turns out that only 13% of the adult population had access to credit in this way over the last 6 months. A particular problem for micro, small, and medium-sized businesses, because every business needs to have credit in order to, use working capital, in order to manage its cash flows. For micro, small, and medium-sized businesses, only 25% of those businesses were carrying any kind of debt. So that is one of the factors that is holding back micro businesses from becoming small ones and small ones from becoming medium-sized ones. Specifically in relation to small and medium-sized enterprises, two problems were cited: inadequate collateral. Micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises don't have the kind of fixed capital that can be used as collateral, the kind of collateral that established commercial banks need. And they have collateral, but not the collateral that banks need. And so that mismatch means that they're not able to access credit. They also spoke about the fact of their informality. Now, of the 425,000 small businesses in Jamaica, half of them are informal and therefore lack the capacity to produce the kind of documents that would be required to be able to access credit.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates.